Diets and workouts, you've done the work, so why can't you get to your goal weight? That's because up to 70% of your weight is predetermined by your genetics. So while you've been told that it's all about your willpower, you're actually fighting your biology. Don't do it alone. Found's Doctor Design program uses medication as part of a treatment plan that targets your body's unique biological needs so that your body works with you and not against you. Take the quiz at joinfound.com to see if Found's weight loss program is right for you.
Welcome to Into the Night. I'm Nari, your guide on today's excursion down a twisted path. Be careful not to get lost. Be it dark or light, it's easy to lose your way. Are you ready? Then let's begin. On the Other Foot. Harriet swept the cobwebs off the doorframe of her home, leaned on the broom, and sighed. Well, Oscar, it looks to be another day of just the two of us. Her orange tomcat, as if he understood her, rubbed against her leg. Don't worry, old boy. I'll get you a saucer of milk. That we have, even if there's not much else in this old place. She knew she should stop holding on to the decrepit house. Not a day went by when a well-meaning neighbor or passerby didn't tell her, "You really should sell this place. Get what you can out of it and move into one of those government-run efficiency apartments they have downtown." Each time she smiled sweetly. "Yes, you're probably right, but this is my home. This is where I raised my family. This is where my memories are. If I lose my memories, what do I have left?" The concerned people nodded knowingly and would say, "Yes, I'm sure that would be difficult," or, "I'm sure you could make friends at the senior center." Then they walked away, leaving Harriet to nurse a broken heart she never shared with the rest of the world. Just thinking about it brought stinging tears to her eyes that morning. Even the bright blue sky and happy songs of the springtime birds couldn't ease her pain. "I know, Oscar. I know. I shouldn't let their good intentions get to me like this. They act as though they understand, but they don't. These aren't just sad tears I'm crying, they're angry tears. All these folks who give me advice, who say they want to help, where were they when I really needed help? Nowhere. All I've ever had was you to talk to share my fears to. Those people wouldn't understand why I can't leave here." Oscar stopped lapping his milk long enough to meow and lick his lips. His tail twitched back and forth, and Harriet reached down to scratch the top of his head. "It's okay, boy. Go ahead and enjoy your milk. It's going to be okay." Her voice drifted away, but her thoughts wouldn't let the idea go. Was it? Was it going to be okay? Sometimes I'm not so sure. There have been so many days that were not okay. I don't even know if I would know what okay would feel like. The old woman shuffled across the kitchen toward the staircase leading upstairs. She wiped her tears away so even Oscar couldn't see how sad she was these days. Next to the staircase was the wall telephone she'd had installed years ago. It was the same one that never rang. She tried not to dwell on just how quiet her old home was these days, but sometimes the silence was oppressive. At the top of the stairs were the first of several bedrooms. She quietly opened the door of a small one tucked under the eaves. The bright pink walls had faded through the years, but the sunshine coming through the window made it seem as cheerful as it always had. "This room always held hope," she mumbled to herself as she sat on a rocking chair near the window. She loved the view from up here since the first time she entered it years ago. In the distance, the mountains, still capped with snow even this late in April, greeted the sky like pyramids reaching for heaven. Below her, she saw the town sprawling outward. So much had changed in her lifetime, but familiar landmarks like the steeple of the Grand Cathedral remained. A baby doll sat patiently waiting in the toy box to her right. Harriet gently picked it up and smoothed its hair. You were mine when I was little. I'd hoped I'd have grandchildren who would sleep in this very room and play with you, sweet Violet." She slowly rocked back and forth, stroking the doll's hair and staring back out the window. "You know, that church is where Randolph and I were married. He was so handsome. I was smitten with him the first time I ever laid eyes on him, and our wedding day felt like some kind of fairy tale. Even Daddy loved Randolph, and I never thought I'd meet a man he'd approve of." The clock chimed a lullaby, causing Harriet to look around the room. She spoke not so much to the doll or to anyone in particular. She knew there was no one to hear her anyway, but saying the words out loud were somehow comforting. "This nursery was the first room we renovated when we moved in after our wedding. Randolph loved children, and he was intent that we have as many as we possibly could. He used to tease me and tell me that what first attracted him to me was that he'd heard our family had a history of twins and triplets." A chuckle escaped her. "And damn if he wasn't right on that one." The long shadows of midday cascaded across the view outside the window, and puffy clouds danced across the sky as a warm spring breeze pushed them onward. Yes, Randolph was a natural when it came to being a father, and he was excited like a kid at Christmas whenever I was expecting. When it was twins or triplets, no man had ever been so happy. "Harriet, honey, I'd be happy if we had 100 children. I inherited enough money to take care of a whole village of little ones. Why, before too long, we will have to move out of this house into a bigger one. I know you love this quirky house, but I'm going to buy you a huge manor. You will feel like a princess." Harriet could hear her husband's deep baritone voice resonate through her memories. A tear trickled down her cheek. "I'd just given birth to our 6th set of twins, Violet, when the accident happened. Poor Randolph never saw it coming, and the only consolation was that it was quick and he didn't feel pain." For a while, Harriet sat in silence. The shadows continued to lengthen as she stared mindlessly out the window. So much pain accompanied the death of her beloved husband, and what happened in the wake of his death was equally catastrophic. The recollections flooded over her, and she turned her attention once again to the doll in her arms. Our happy home turned into nothing but grief and poverty. The doll stared up at her. "Yes, Violet, poverty. Before Randolph died, we had more than we could have ever wanted. After he died, his family, who never approved of me, found a way to take away all of Randolph's inheritance. They left me with nothing but this house and 26 children to care for. I thought we'd starve." The years after Randolph's death were bleak. Harriet resorted to begging the local church for aid, but that only fed them for so long. She was given scraps of fat and discarded meat by Olin, the village butcher. She never forgot his kindness. "Without you, Olin, we would starve. I don't know how to repay you." "Harriet, we have known each other since we were small children. I've always cared for you. If circumstances were different, I would marry you, but..." "But you don't want to raise 26 children who aren't yours." "My dear, I don't want to raise 26 children even if they were mine. I'm sorry." Harriet was alone, to not only deal with her grief, but to take care of her many children. She knew her looks had faded and she was aging quickly due to the stress. She was completely overwhelmed. Much of the time, she didn't have flour to make bread, and all she could feed her offspring were bowls of thin broth made from the tidbits of meat from Olin's butcher shop. The children resented me for it, Violet. They never forgave me for the loss of their carefree lives before their father died. They told me if I'd been more presentable, a little prettier, or if I'd come from a better family, that Randolph's family would have accepted me. Her voice choked, and she covered her face with her hands, sobbing. I will never forget when Franklin looked at me with hate in his eyes and yelled, "I wish it was you who had died. At least Father could have taken care of us. Do you know how embarrassed we are to know everyone pities us?" He didn't have to hate me, Violet. I hated myself. I too wish that I had died instead of Randolph. But no matter how much I wished for it, I awoke to the same nightmare day after day. For a time, she rocked in silence. They all hate me, you know. I know there were times I lost my temper and spanked them, and for that I am sorry. I was overwhelmed, but that is no excuse. As soon as the children could leave the house, they did. None of them call. None of them check to see how I am doing. I am sure they have children of their own, but I will never see my grandchildren. I suppose it's folly on my part to keep this house, to have all these rooms, to even keep you, Violet. I held on to all of this, she motioned with her hands at the room, in hopes that they would return and bring laughter with them. It's not to be. The grandfather clock downstairs chimed its deep ding-dong, and that shook Harriet from her thoughts. She set the doll back into the toy box and rose. Oscar patiently waited in the kitchen below. "I know. I will get you a tin of fish to eat. I should have fed you already." Harriet carefully dished a can of fish into Oscar's saucer. The cat purred loudly and ate heartily. "I'll take this garbage outside to be picked up in the morning. I'll be in to pour you some more milk, my friend." Harriet carefully lifted the bag from the trash can and tottered out the front door of her home. Approaching her down the sidewalk was a woman and her small boy. He was barely 3 or 4 from the looks of him. As they passed by, the young woman stopped to stare at Harriet and her home.
"Old woman?"
he said as he pointed at the house. "Jacob, don't talk to her in such a way." "It's okay. I have been called many names in my day." "I do apologize for him."
"But, Mama, I must ask her,"
the boy pleaded. Harriet leaned down toward him. "What would you like to ask me, little one?"
"Old woman, why do you live in a shoe?"
She patted his head, sighed, and said, "That is a very long story." Thank you for joining me for Into the Night, an anthology series written by Caroline Giammanco, narration and sound design by Nari, theme music by Nico Rodriguez, and all original music created by Alex Sexton. You can find our links in the show notes. Into the Night can be found on your favorite podcast directory. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. If you enjoy what you hear, please leave us a 5-star review to help new excursionists to join us. See you next time. And remember, whether in the shadows or in the daylight, all twisted paths take you into the night. Into the Night is an A Fool's Quest production.